Tonight, holiday shopping turnaround. All signs point to a record Thanksgiving weekend at the malls. Our Tony Guida is following the crowds. A hard lesson for those 3 American students caught up in the turmoil in Egypt. Cynthia Bowers talks with one of them. He's wanted for bank robberies across Southern California. But is he really the elderly man he appears to be? Bill Whitaker is on the case. And meet Judge Jimmy. He's a no-nonsense justice who believes the real answer lies in giving young offenders a second chance.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
And good evening. As the Thanksgiving weekend draws to a close, retailers are breathing a sigh of relief and adding up their sales. A record 226 million shoppers visited stores and websites this weekend, an industry survey says. That's up 14 million from last year. And they spent a record $52.4 billion. Tony Guida has been taking the pulse of the American shopper.
Recession? What recession? Americans are shopping and spending this holiday weekend like their pants are on fire.
Oh, the deals are great this weekend. You just got to have the patience to stand in line and weave through the crowds.
And the luck to survive occasional mayhem. At a Walmart in Mesquite, Texas, Thanksgiving night, shoppers flipped out over DVD deals, ripping them out of cartons in a frenzied scrum. One woman was nearly trampled. The siren song of savings lured shoppers into stores early, and they spent, on average, almost $400 each, a record.
The retailers that opened at midnight on Thanksgiving night were thrilled that they did so.
Comes now another sales gimmick, Cyber Monday. Graham Jones, who manages a shopping website with 12,000 retailers, thinks it'll be even bigger than Black Friday.
Absolutely. 5 to 7% is what I predict for Monday, up over the same Monday last year.
Even bricks and mortar businesses figure to get their cut of the Cyber Monday dollar.
At this JCPenney store in Midtown Manhattan, if they don't have the item you're looking for, you can order it online with this device. They expect to do a brisk Cyber Monday business right here in the store.
So in the teeth of vast unemployment and millions of mortgages still underwater, why are Americans spending with apparent abandon?
Emotional giving. Folks don't want to pull back on their gifts. They're going to pull back somewhere else.
And cyber shop even while they work.
You're not supposed to cyber on work, but I'm going to try my best because I know there's going to be some deals.
By the way, just 27 shopping days till Christmas. Tony Guida, CBS News, New York.
Holiday travel is up this weekend as well, with an estimated 42.5 million people expected to have traveled more than 50 miles from home. That's 4% more than last year. A band of rain showers moving eastward across the country may end up delaying some of those homeward bound travelers. 3 young American students are back home safe and sound tonight after their brief confinement in Egypt last week. They say they were simply trying to watch history in the making. But as Cynthia Bowers tells us, they got a lot more than they bargained for.
Emotional homecomings as 3 college students held for 6 days by Egyptian authorities arrived back on American soil. Greg Porter landed in Philadelphia, Luke Gates in Indianapolis.
It's a really good feeling.
19-year-old Derek Sweeney arrived in St. Louis, Missouri late last night, and early today he arrived at his family's home in Jefferson City.
How does it feel to walk into your house after everything you've been through?
It feels really nice.
Sanctuary?
Yeah, it feels like home.
The 3 were arrested last Sunday accused of throwing Molotov cocktails near Cairo's Tahrir Square. Derek describes the first terrifying night in custody.
We were in a near fetal position with our hands handcuffed behind our back, and with our shirts still over our heads so we couldn't see anything even in the dark. And they said if we moved we would get shot, they would shoot us.
The 3 were brought before cameras, showing them with firebombs Egyptian authorities said came from their backpacks. Derek says these bottles might have belonged to Egyptians, but not to the 3 Americans.
There's a picture of you holding what looks like a Dasani bottle, but there's definitely colored fluid in there.
Yeah.
What is that?
They put it up against my mouth and threatened as though they were going to make me drink it, and As far as I could tell, I mean, my best guess would be gasoline.
Today, the Georgetown student admits he may have been naive in being drawn to an area where protesters and police were battling it out. He says he was curious to watch Egypt's struggle for political freedom.
You do get passionate about it, and it's about a passion for democracy and liberty and values that I think Americans can stand for too.
Derek doubts he'll be allowed back into Egypt anytime soon. For now, he's thankful to be home. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Jefferson City, Missouri.
And back in Egypt, the curtain goes up tomorrow on the first election since the ouster of Hosni Mubarak earlier this year. Many Egyptians appear eager to take part, despite widespread doubts among the protesters in Cairo's Tahrir Square. Elizabeth Palmer has more.
On the eve of Egypt's elections, in one of Cairo's oldest neighborhoods, Tahrir Square and the protesters feel a world away. Around the domino board, some do know who they're going to vote for tomorrow. Yes, I do, he says. And some are still on the fence.
You only have about 12 hours left to decide.
But there is consensus on the main thing. Everyone here is heading to the polls.
So you believe this is going to be a good election?
Inshallah. Inshallah. We must trust. If we don't trust, we will lose.
With 6,000 parliamentary candidates and 50 million potential voters, it's going to be complicated. Only a third of Egypt's regions will vote tomorrow and Tuesday. The rest will get their turn over the next 8 weeks, with the final result expected in mid-January. The parliament's first job will be to oversee the writing of Egypt's brand new constitution. Many of the protesters in Tahrir Square are boycotting this election, saying Egypt's military government has to leave power first. But millions are expected to turn out and choose between secular liberals, remnants of ex-President Hosni Mubarak's regime, and the powerhouse in this race, the Muslim Brotherhood, an Islamic movement rebranded for the election as the Freedom and Justice Party, but which has been organizing the grassroots, especially the poor, for decades.
We have our supporters, years before, so it's easy now to call them again. We are doing our best to bring your freedom to you, so please try to get down, try to vote.
The Muslim Brotherhood has a reputation as an extremist Islamist party, but in fact in Egypt it's a modern, sophisticated political machine, and it's running candidates that range from mildly religious to fundamentalist and even a secular liberal here and there where it seems to make political sense. Russ?
Elizabeth Palmer in Cairo. Thank you. NATO and the United States are both investigating the weekend airstrikes along the Afghan border that left 24 Pakistani soldiers dead. Thousands of Pakistanis converged outside the U.S. consulate in Karachi today as anti-U.S. protests spread. Charlie Daggett has the latest.
In a small village in northern Pakistan today, they held a funeral for Najib Ullah, a young soldier mistakenly killed by NATO forces. It was the last chance for Asfan Yar to see his young son's face. We've given our children up for the security of this country, he says, not so that they're killed in their own land. The Pakistani government called the cross-border airstrike an unprovoked attack, shut down vital supply routes to U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and demanded the U.S. vacate a key air base. Today, Afghan officials said its forces called in the airstrike after taking fire from the direction of 2 Pakistani border posts. They've also expressed concern the attack may cause long-term damage to their relations with Pakistan. For now, most of Pakistan's fury is directed against the United States. Protesters shouted, "Down with America," demanding Pakistan end its uneasy alliance with the U.S. That's unlikely to happen. Pakistan depends on billions of dollars in military and civilian aid from the U.S., and the U.S. needs Pakistan's help in fighting the Taliban. But the deaths of 24 Pakistani soldiers has dealt a severe blow to a relationship already under strain. According to some, even moderate Pakistanis are now asking if it's worth keeping ties with the U.S. Charlie Daggett of CBS News, London.
In a first-ever move against one of its members, the Arab League today slapped tough economic sanctions on Syria aiming to pressure President Assad into ending his crackdown on pro-democracy protesters. The UN estimates more than 3,500 have been killed since March. Syria denounced the sanctions as a betrayal of Arab solidarity. Just ahead, the 112th Congress. Could it be the most do-nothing Congress ever? Congress returns from a Thanksgiving break tomorrow, with time becoming an issue. With the failure of the supercommittee to agree on cutting the deficit, members have barely a month to address more immediate concerns. Whit Johnson is on Capitol Hill with the latest. Whit, good evening.
Russ, good evening. The broader deficit reduction debate will be put on hold for now. Instead, Congress will focus on some critical loose ends that, if not addressed in a matter of weeks, will affect millions of Americans.
Packed in the backlog of legislation set to expire by the end of the year are long-term unemployment benefits and the payroll tax cut.
If we don't provide the tax relief that President Obama has asked for, families are going to see an increase in taxes.
Today, Democratic Senator Dick Durbin again pushed to keep the payroll tax cut in place, but by increasing taxes on wealthier Americans to cover the $112 billion price tag, a non-starter for Republicans like Senator John Kyle, who say it won't help the economy.
The payroll tax holiday has not stimulated job creation. We don't think that is a good way to do it.
Republicans argue if you want to keep payroll taxes low, do it by cutting spending elsewhere. Same goes for extending long-term unemployment benefits, which without a deal will cut aid to nearly 2 million jobless in January alone. National Journal congressional correspondent Major Garrett.
Legislating by crisis, that will be the defining characteristic of this very ineffective Congress in December.
With an approval rating of just 9%, the 112th Congress may go down as the least productive in modern history. So far, it's passed only 44 public bills that were signed into law. Even the so-called do-nothing 80th Congress under President Harry Truman passed 906.
Both sides know they're arguing past each other, and intentionally so, to make a bigger political point. Why? Well, because next year's an election year.
Some Republicans say passing bills just for the sake of passing bills only means more spending. And as they attempt to win back the White House and the Senate in 2012, continued gridlock is expected. Russ?
Whit Johnson on Capitol Hill. Thanks a lot. When we come back, the latest from the campaign trail. With just over 6 weeks to go before the New Hampshire primary, the state's largest newspaper, the Union Leader, today endorsed Newt Gingrich, who just last week finished second in a statewide poll that had Mitt Romney in the lead, 42% to 15%. And joining us now from Washington is CBS News political director John Dickerson. John, good evening.
Good evening, Russ.
Newt Gingrich is having a pretty good week. What does this endorsement mean to his campaign?
Well, it's good news for conservatives, that he has support among conservatives. It doesn't mean a lot electorally. The Union Leader has backed the loser of the New Hampshire primary as much as the winner. But it does help Gingrich raise money, which he needs, and it helps him with conservatives who've been grumbling recently about his position on immigration. The Union Leader publisher argues that conservatives need to stop looking for the ideal candidate who's not out there and settle on the most conservative and effective of the bunch actually running.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is this endorsement is a good thing for Newt Gingrich, but as far as knocking Mitt Romney out of the lead, it's not necessarily going to do that, right?
That's right. It nicks him a little in New Hampshire. The editorial says we would rather back someone with whom we may sometimes disagree than one who tells us what he thinks we want to hear. That sounds like a veiled shot at Romney. And we'll see if the paper keeps taking those shots. But Romney has a stronghold in New Hampshire. He's got strong roots in that state and a good organization. It'll take more than this endorsement to threaten his lead. But in a larger sense, if this solidifies Gingrich as the alternative to Romney, that could be bad because Romney benefits when the anti-Romney vote is split.
John Dickerson in Washington, as always, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Russ.
Ahead, the bandit who may be lying about his age. That story is next. Witnesses describe the gunman who's been holding up California banks with regularity as being in his 60s or 70s. But appearances can be deceptive, and the so-called geezer bandit might even be a whippersnapper. Bill Whitaker has more.
He looks more like a grandfather than a hardened criminal, but this unassuming senior citizen is one of the FBI's most wanted bank robbers. Dubbed the Geezer Bandit by law enforcement, he's the primary suspect in a string of brazen holdups, hitting 15 banks across Southern California and getting away with tens of thousands of dollars.
He appears to be a harmless elderly man.
Special Agent Darrell Foxworth has tried to crack the Geezer case since 2009, when the robber first hit a bank near San Diego. Now, 2 years and more than a dozen banks later, the FBI says the Geezer has struck again, robbing this San Diego area Wells Fargo on September 30th. Surveillance video shows him calmly waiting in line. After he approaches the teller, he demands a large sum of money and pulls out a gun.
He came in, requested money, passed a note and said, "If you don't, I will murder you and everyone else in the bank."
This bank teller feared for her life when the Geezer Bandit robbed her bank last January. She asked us to conceal her identity, and she believes the Geezer is concealing his.
Something didn't look normal. It wasn't a normal face.
The Geezer Bandit might not be a geezer at all. Witnesses say his deeply wrinkled face looks unnatural and his voice sounds younger than he appears. So the FBI is considering the possibility that the geezer getup is an elaborate disguise. It's happened before. Last year, a young man transformed himself with a geezer-esque mask and boarded a plane from Hong Kong to Canada. And a Los Angeles special effects costume company sells masks online that look strikingly similar to the Geezer Bandit.
The so-called Geezer Bandit has struck again.
His story has sparked a media sensation. He has more than 11,000 Facebook fans, with some selling Geezer merchandise. But the FBI is not amused.
At the end of the day, he is an armed and dangerous bank robber.
And there's now a $20,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Ahead, the judge who wants to keep young people out of his courtroom. Finally this evening, each of us has something to be thankful for this Thanksgiving weekend. And for hundreds of young people in St. Louis, that something is a second chance. And that's tonight's Sunday cover. A visit with a tough but innovative judge.
Good morning, everyone.
Here in this juvenile courtroom,
You can't be in a gang with me.
no-nonsense judge Jimmy Edwards doles out fleeting wisdom to kids accused of crimes. Too often, it's too late.
When I get ready to lock you up, nobody's going to be down here supporting you.
What is the toughest part of your day?
The toughest part of my day is when children come in and I know that they need help. I know that but for somebody else getting involved in their lives, that they have no opportunity of succeeding.
So, to reduce the number of kids who wind up in jail, Judge Edwards created classrooms. 2 years ago, he opened the Innovative Concept Academy for the youngsters who have been expelled or appear destined for a life in crime. More than 700 students have enrolled.
Let's not lock them all up. Let's not be so punitive. Let's teach them. And what's so great about teaching them is that they want to learn.
18-year-old Jakayla Ivory came to the academy last fall after she assaulted a classmate.
How do you think you've changed in the last year or so?
I'm doing better in school. I'm more helpful with my mom around the house.
When these kids walk into your courtroom for the first time, what's going through their mind?
They see a judge that will tell them, try your best. Give me an effort today better than you gave me last week.
Where do you think you'd be if you weren't sent to this school? Any idea?
Seriously, I think I would be locked up right now.
Alante Wiss, Dayon Smith, and Nadia Jones have all raised their grades, along with their optimism.
What do you all three hope to do down the road? What do you, any goals, any plans, any dreams?
I want to be a forensic detective.
A forensic detective? Yes. Okay, you?
I would rather go to college when I leave here.
There's so much you could learn. I just want to learn, get more.
Judge Edwards says his program is changing the course of lives through discipline, education, and opportunity.
Are you surprised at the reaction that you've received from
I am absolutely amazed. It has stirred a new and wonderful discussion all over America about how to deal with delinquents, incorrigibles, and education.
The Innovative Concept Academy costs about $2,500 per student and is funded in part by the state of Missouri and the St. Louis Public School District. Other states are now considering similar programs. And that is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS, 60 Minutes. Thanks for joining us this Sunday evening. I'm Russ Mitchell at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York. Scott Pelley will be here tomorrow. Good night.